Hi, this is DC McHenry with DCMcHenry.com. We make crank lockers, and today I'm going to show you how crank lockers go on your crank. Crank lockers allow you to adjust the length of the crank on your bicycle anywhere from 25 millimeters longer or 25 millimeters shorter. And the crank locker accomplishes this. You can set it anywhere in between by clocking the crank clocker. That's how it's done. So each crank clocker comes, there's a right hand side and a left hand side, and they're marked with an L or a R, as the case may be. The left hand side is for the side opposite the chain. We're going to show obviously the side that the right hand side where the chain runs on all bicycles. So the crank locker is made of the link with the 6 set screws in it, and the washer that is got some little divots in it that mate with the shoulders of the set screws. So the first thing to do is to drop this washer in there and make sure it's locked on the set screws. The set screws are in there turned far enough in to mate with these little indentations, and then the crank link is ready to put on there. Take and make sure you have the right bolt and set the crank locker in place on the crank. Obviously you have already removed the pedals in preparation for installing the crank locker, and then you just screw the crank locker bolt in. Finger tight is good, just so it's far enough down that the set screws can do the main part of the tightening. So it's got a screw slot in it, but you really don't have to get this tight. You can get it a little bit snug so you can clock the crank. So then once you got the crank locker in there, you want to choose which way you're going to clock the crank. I usually like to clock them back this way, so if you're pedaling both pedals on both sides, the crank clocker will be tilted toward the back. Just need to get them the same on both sides so that you still maintain the 180-degree relationship between the two pedals. So by putting this in all the way, like I said, you'd be 25 millimeters shorter. I made these especially for me because I wanted a longer crank than they normally supply on bicycles. So I'm going to show you here where this had clocked all the way out. I'd be at 200 millimeters, a full 25 millimeters longer than this stock 175 millimeter crank. But let's say we're going to just set this at say 190. It's a little bit tricky to measure it, but we'll clock it back to 190 and hold this in place and start tightening up these set screws that push that washer against the crank. The crank clockers are very sturdy, very robust. By the time you tighten up all these 5 millimeter set screws, it creates enough force with that washer pressing against the crank that it definitely won't budge once you get it locked in. Once you get it snugged up a little bit, you want to come back and double check your length. You can see that's still right at 190. And so that's it. All I have to do now is just tighten the snot out of these set screws one at a time. Just alternate across from each other to get an even draw up. And that's it. Tighten them all up nice and tight, and this thing won't budge. We've tested them with 300-pound cyclists, mountain bikers, pounding them all day long, and once you get those things tightened up nice and tight, they won't budge an inch. Now I'm ready to put my pedal back on the bike, and there it is. Crank clockers, I really love them. It's been great for me because I got long legs, and so now I have a long crank. It also helps me that the extra thickness of the crank clocker moves my foot out away from the crank, so my toes point out a little bit, so that way it keeps my heel from banging against the pedal all the time. So for big riders it's ideal, and it's ideal for anybody who wants to just try a slightly different length on their cranks without investing in a whole new crank. That's it. Thanks for looking in. Come and see us. Crank Lockers, DCMcHenry.com. This is DC McHenry signing out. Bye.